Hi, I'm Charlie Newell, the Artistic Director of Court Theater, and just wanted to share with you some sense of the context for some of the art that we'll be producing in the future. One of the questions I get asked a lot is when Court Theater, now over 10, 15 years ago, began regularly doing musicals, why would a classic theater company begin to produce musicals? And of course, my gut response was, well, they're like the most classic of American theater art forms in that we invented them, but more dramaturgically, often if you scratch a great musical, you'll find a classic text upon which it's based. So you can imagine a number of musicals that you love, I'll bet were based in some classic text. But beyond that, the opportunity for Court to produce in our 250-seat theater musicals that one often sees at a much larger and grander scale, the kind of intimacy, the kind of, frankly, perfect acoustics that are in the Court space, it felt like, as one thinks about heightened verse text, when you do those plays, it's like a whole other power or a whole other tool one has to express the emotions when the language is heightened. But then to think of it as going even to the next gear, in my automotive metaphor, of not only do musicals have lyrics that are heightened form, but then the idea is that the character doesn't know how to express the emotions speaking, so they have to sing. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about at Court is, why does this character go from spoken to sung? What's going on beyond just the beautiful musicality of it, but the necessity of that's the only way they can express the emotion. I think many of you may recall when Court first started producing musicals, the kind of singular performances that have come about. And it's essentially from that distillation. The first time we produced My Fair Lady, in fact, was one of the early musicals we did. Well, one of the things you may not know is that that was an orchestration of only 2 pianos, which was an opportunity, again, for a kind of a compression. We were producing that show in a theater that had a much smaller and compressed stage space. So by necessity, we had to distill it down to its essence. And then casting the extraordinary Kate Fry in that performance in My Fair Lady is one of the most memorable performances that Court Theater has ever done, and many of you refer to that when you think about musicals at Court. I would carry that forward in terms of the kind of distillation and yet singular performance. For instance, if you recall our production of Mantle of Mancha with Herbert Perry and Hollis Resnick leading that company, or Alexis Rogers and Porgy and Bess leading that company. But I guess the one that I wanted to focus on today is, I'm sure many of you remember Faye Butler's singular and most iconic performance in Chicago music theater history of Caroline and Caroline or Change. So what we've pulled is not the solo performance that you might think, which is Lot's Wife, which I'll refer to after the clip, but rather a small piece of the musical called I'm Gonna Pass Me a Law. And so what you'll see is the kind of distillation of performance, the distillation of design, and just the sheer simplicity with which we tried to reveal this emotion of this extraordinary character through the incomparable Faye Butler. So let's watch this clip. So you see, this is scenic design by John Culbert. And this is the entire basement. That's all the basement that is. Faye outside.
Now that President Kennedy's dead, now you're the only president in the United States.
So now she needs to sing about this.
That night last
should be my age and not know enough to read a map. Gonna pass me along.
We created an intimacy between her and Malcolm by keeping them at distance, which is counterintuitive. And frankly, it's a question I've been thinking a lot about these days when social distancing keeps us all apart. How do we create intimacy? This scene reminded me of how distance can actually create a sense of intimacy. Anyway, and in just that little bit of music and how much range Faye found between the kind of simple and then the large, so that the extremes could reveal the detail and the intimacy of that amazing storytelling. I thought I would just remind us of that most iconic performance of Faye's by my much inadequate to her performance, but by my just speaking some of the distillation and simple language that the extraordinary composer Jeanine Tesori wrote for this song, Lot's Wife. Tear out my heart, strangle my soul, turn me to salt, a pillar of salt, a broken stone, and then Caroline, Caroline. From the evil she done, Lord, set her free, set her free, set me free. Don't let my sorrow make evil of me. I'll never forget Faye's performance of that. So as we look ahead to the next musical we want to do, we've committed to producing Bob Telson and Lee Brewer's The Gospel at Colonus. And this will be the largest production that Court Theater has ever done in terms of cast size and musicians. And so you think, well, wait a minute, Charlie, you've just been talking about intimacy and distillation, and now we're going to go big. Well, that's a major question for us in the design and in the implementation of it, because it contains such powerful, intimate, emotional moments of redemption and transition and epiphany and supplication contained within the Sophocles story in this form of using gospel music to tell the story. So it's a big challenge for us of how can we do what's unique and specific to Court, even as we have ambition for this production at such a scale. I wanted to show you just, and again, these are preliminary, we haven't finalized, an image of the scenic design that we're looking at and how simple it is. You can see essentially the musicians in place and the solo performer. And then we also looked at models where we actually put the entire company on stage. So here you can see the full complement of all those performers. So one of the things that's going to be super exciting is to find the intimacy of this story that tells Sophocles' end of life journey. He wrote the play towards the very end of his life, or even maybe didn't finish it before he passed. So our goal will be the same, namely how to dig as deeply into the emotionally transformative experiences that the characters in the piece have, how they use and need music to tell that emotional journey, and while maintaining the kind of an intimacy and simplicity and distillation so that you, the audience, have as much of this similar shared sense of catharsis and communal emotional transformation that Oedipus does in Gospel Colonus. We can't wait to have you all join us in the Court Theater space when it's safe for us all to do that and to share with you this next musical we're going to be producing. So thank you so much. Stay safe, wash your hands. Bless you for watching. Thank you for joining us.